Let's get into it. What you're about to hear is too real for comfort. Number 10. For centuries, sailors described a monster. Science said they were wrong. They came back from the deep ocean with stories no one wanted to believe. Enormous arms rising from black water, eyes the size of dinner plates. Sailors across different centuries described the same creature without ever having met each other. The stories were filed under fantasy. The sea monster became a symbol of human fear, not a subject for science. Then the bodies started washing up. Tentacles thick as a man's torso, beaks hard enough to crack bone, suckers that left permanent scars on sperm whales. Real and enormous. In the early 2000s, the first photographs of a living giant squid were taken in the deep ocean. It moved exactly the way sailors had described for 300 years. An even larger species was later confirmed. The colossal squid, heavier and more powerful, adapted to depths no human had ever reached. Somewhere in the deep ocean right now, a colossal squid is moving through total darkness. It has never seen a human. It does not know it was ever doubted. Number 9. For 2,000 years, Troy was a poem. Then, someone found the walls. Ancient stories described a great city destroyed in a legendary war. Heroes, kings, a wooden horse. Historians treated the tale as literature. Beautiful, dramatic, entirely invented. The problem? No one could find Troy. No ruins, no location, no proof. Homer, scholars agreed, had simply invented it. In the 19th century, an amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann refused to accept this. He was not respected. He was simply convinced, in a way that made serious scholars uncomfortable, that Troy was real. He spent his own money, traveled to a site in modern Turkey called Hisarlik, and knelt in the dust. The walls appeared, layer beneath layer. Ancient settlements built on top of each other across thousands of years. Weapons, pottery, evidence of violent destruction. Troy was not one city. It was many, rebuilt on the same ground across millennia. The most famous legend in Western literature had been standing in a field in Turkey the entire time. Number 8. For most of human history, the idea that invisible creatures could kill you was considered madness. When people got sick, explanations came from everywhere except the truth. Bad air, imbalanced fluids, divine punishment. The suggestion that tiny organisms could cause death struck most educated people as absurd. Some physicians noticed patterns. Disease spread in ways suggesting something physical moved between people. Without proof, the idea stayed at the edge of respectability. Then Anton van Leeuwenhoek held a drop of water up to a lens he had ground himself and saw a world moving inside it that no human had ever seen. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch later proved that specific bacteria caused specific diseases. Invisible life was in water, in air, on every surface, inside every body. Medicine changed. Hospitals cleaned their instruments. Surgeons washed their hands. Life expectancy climbed. The idea that invisible creatures could kill you was not madness. It was 200 years ahead of its time. Number 7. Ancient stories described strange humanoid beings living in the wilderness. Science thought these were legends. The bones told a different story. For centuries, myths spoke of wild men and human-like creatures at the edge of the known world. Scholars treated these stories as folklore. Humans had always been humans. There was nothing else. Then, the fossils arrived. The first Neanderthal skeleton was uncovered in the 19th century. The skull sat on a university table, and nobody knew what to do with it. The shape was wrong, the brow too heavy, the body built differently from any living human. Some scientists refused to accept it. The bones belonged, they argued, to a deformed modern man. But more fossils followed, and the picture became impossible to ignore. Neanderthals were real. They walked upright, made tools, buried their dead, and lived alongside our ancestors for thousands of years. Not monsters, relatives. Later came more: Homo erectus, the Denisovans, and others. Some interbred with modern humans. Their DNA is still in people alive today. The wild humanoids of ancient legend may have been something more precise than imagination. They may have been memory. 7 down. What you've just heard happened long ago. What comes next landed on people's heads. Number 6. For centuries, farmers and peasants reported stones falling from the sky. Scientists told them this was impossible. The logic seemed sound. The sky contains air, clouds, and light. It does not contain rocks. When people reported stones falling from above, educated men explained it patiently. Lightning, atmospheric tricks, misidentification. The French Academy of Sciences declared officially in 1772 that stones do not fall from the sky. The matter was settled. Then, on April 26, 1803, a meteor broke apart over the French town of L'Aigle and rained thousands of stones onto the countryside. Hundreds of witnesses. The stones were still warm when farmers picked them up from the fields. They were unlike any rock found on Earth. The French Academy sent a scientist to investigate. The Academy had been wrong. What peasants had reported for centuries turned out to be one of the most common events in the solar system. The greatest scientific institution in France had been wrong, and the peasants had been right. For centuries. 5 down. The universe is bigger and stranger than we were told. The next 3 come closer: underground, into animal minds, and finally, into your own. Number 5. Ancient myths described worlds hidden beneath the earth. Underground kingdoms, secret civilizations, vast realms below the feet of the living. Scientists dismissed this entirely. The underground was rock, heat, and darkness, nothing more. Then, explorers started going down. In 1986, a Romanian scientist named Cristian Lascu crawled through a crack in the earth and emerged into a cave that had been sealed for 5 million years. The air inside had never been breathed. The creatures living there had never seen light. Cave systems of impossible scale were discovered, passages stretching hundreds of kilometers containing species that had never seen sunlight. Animals without eyes, navigating by touch and vibration. Ecosystems evolved in complete isolation. Deeper still, bacteria were found kilometers beneath the crust, surviving on chemical reactions instead of sunlight. The deep biosphere may contain more living matter than everything on the surface combined. No one found a hidden kingdom. But the earth beneath your feet is not empty. It is ancient, strange, and almost entirely unexplored. Number 4. In December 1938, a young museum curator named Marjorie Courtney Latimer noticed something wrong in a fishing catch in South Africa. One fish did not look like any fish she had ever seen. Large, steel blue, covered in strange, hard scales. She sketched it on the dock, in the cold. Her sketch reached a fish expert. His response was barely controlled astonishment. What she had found was a coelacanth, a species believed extinct for 65 million years, known only from fossils, considered a direct ancestor of all land vertebrates, presumed gone since the age of the dinosaurs. It had not been gone. Local fishermen had been catching them for years. They called them gombessa. Nobody had ever asked them. The most significant animal discovery of the century had been sitting in fishing nets for decades. The fish had not been hiding. We had simply never asked the right people. Number 3. For centuries, people noticed that animals seemed to know things they shouldn't. Dogs that ran to the door minutes before their owners arrived home. long before any car could be heard, long before any footstep on the path. Birds that abandoned entire regions before earthquakes struck. Horses that refused to enter buildings that later collapsed. Farmers passed these observations down for generations, and science dismissed every one of them as coincidence. Then, the research began. Dogs can detect the chemical signatures of cancer, diabetes, and epileptic seizures before any instrument can confirm them. Some species sense electromagnetic changes that precede earthquakes. Birds navigate across continents using magnetic field lines invisible to every human instrument. A dog sits at the edge of a hospital bed and refuses to leave. 3 days later, the diagnosis arrives. It simply had no way to say so. The abilities are not supernatural. They are biological, and they are extraordinary. The animals were not predicting the future. They were perceiving a version of the present that humans could not access. We built instruments to detect what they were born knowing. Number 2. Ancient myths spoke of invisible forces that could reach inside the human mind and change it. Science called this superstition. Then psychology arrived. For centuries, the idea that unseen forces could shape human behavior was associated with curses and dark magic. Educated people dismissed this. Humans were rational. They made their own decisions. Then the experiments began. Researchers found that lighting, sound, temperature, and the arrangement of a room could change how people thought and decided, without anyone noticing. Repeated exposure to ideas made those ideas feel more believable, regardless of their truth. Social pressure could lead people to deny what their own eyes were seeing. The same news, shown every day on TV, begins to feel like truth. The same idea, repeated often enough, begins to feel like a conviction. Not because it is true, because it is familiar. Certain chemicals, pollutants, hormones, particles in food and water could alter mood, attention, and cognition, without consent, without awareness. The myths were not wrong about the forces. They were only wrong about the names. Number 1. Ancient Greeks wrote about a civilization of warrior women who fought in battles and refused to be ruled. For 2,000 years, historians called this myth. Then, archaeologists began excavating burial sites across the Eurasian steppe. The graves contained weapons, armor, horses. The skeletons were assumed to be male because the graves contained weapons. Then came DNA testing. Many of the warriors were women. Some had healed battle injuries, wounds that proved they had fought in real combat. Their skeletal structure showed years of horseback riding and archery. The arrow tips were still beside the bones. These were not symbolic burials. These women had lived and fought exactly as described. Greek writers encountering Scythian women on the battlefield carried those memories home and transformed them into the myth of the Amazons. The exaggeration was cultural. The encounter was real. The most powerful legend in ancient history about women who refuse to be defeated turned out to be based on women who refuse to be defeated.